Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. This is my first time doing one of these, and I'm not going to lie, I'm a little nervous, but also excited just to be here with you on this beautiful Saturday evening, rainy Saturday evening if you're in my part of the country. It's been rainy and stormy and gray. But here we are. I am doing an Ask Me Anything episode tonight. So if you're watching the replay and you had questions and you didn't get to ask them, you want to ask about me, about writing, about books, about publishing, you can drop all of that in the comments and I will try to reply to those for you. If you're watching live, you can drop your questions live. I did post on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and ask for some questions in advance because I know this time doesn't work for everybody. So while you guys who are watching live can leave your questions live, I'm going to go ahead and dive into a couple of the pre-submitted questions, and then we'll see who's on, see what questions we get. Thank you all for being here the Super Bowl weekend, and you're here doing bookish chatting with me. So excited. Before I answer the first question, for those who are stumbling across this video for the first time, hi, I'm Katherine. I'm a USA Today bestselling dark fantasy author, and I love to read books, love to write books. I edit books for a living, so my head is always in the clouds, and thankfully I've got family that help pull me down to earth from time to time. So here I am. Okay, so hey AF, good to have you on. So the first question that I got pre-submitted for tonight was asking from a fellow author how you write just one book. What can you do to keep from being distracted and working on other projects? And I think that these are two slightly separate but very important questions. The first about writing just one book. For me, I don't really write just one book. I personally work on several projects, and that's because from time to time, since I'm a pantser and not a planner, I get tired or I have a really emotional scene in a book and I need to step away and I need to refresh and I need to recover some of that creative energy so that I don't burn out on a piece that I love. But right now I have 3 separate series that I'm working on. You guys know about Starfire Express that I'm hoping to get out to you this year. You know I've been working on Vanguard of Justice for the Lord's Gambit series for this year. But I've also got one that's just for fun that I haven't really mentioned anywhere that I'm writing that I'm just doing to freshen it up, keep it new. And as far as not getting distracted, that's a different story. So I think there's a couple different tips. I'm not going to speak for all planners since I'm not one, but I have heard planners mention that they have like storyboard ideas and they let themselves jot their ideas down and set them to the side so they can come back to those stories later. And then they'll still have their outline. And when they're reading through their outline, they'll know, okay, yeah, that's what I'm working on. But they don't give themselves permission to actually write it until they finish their current project or they schedule in time to work on both. For me personally, when I am writing my 3 books and I don't want to get distracted with a 3rd or 4th or 5th series, I do something similar. I jot down ideas, but instead of jotting down an outline, I jot down scenes that I really have in my head. I write them all the way out, and then I stick them in a separate file so that I can come back to those when I finish my active ones. And getting to write those is motivation for me to finish a book that I'm on. We're going to grab this one from the live. Why did you start writing fantasy as opposed to another genre? This is a great question. I have written fantasy for as long as I can remember. The first books I wrote were, I think, in the style of a lot of other authors, fan fiction of series that I wrote. The first books that I ever wrote were with crayons on construction paper when I was just in grade school. And it's evolved that way. Something about, at that time, Narnia and Star Trek and these other worlds were all great, but the fantasy, the magic is what made it special. And as an adult, I've dipped into different types of fantasy. I've dipped into some science fantasy, dipped into some romance, but I really landed on the stories that I felt come the most naturally to me as a storyteller, and also bring in what ifs that I don't see represented as much in the industry. So what if at the time I started Starfire Express. What if the main character was perfectly human and never gains powers at all and still has the responsibility of changing the whole world? Was a really interesting concept for me. And I hadn't seen a lot of books about that at that time, because back when I started writing it, it was very much the strong main characters with all the superpowers is what was trending. But then I discovered indie books, and indie self published books don't have the boundaries. So that made it a lot easier to branch out, to give myself permission to try. But even when I've tried to write science like within the Clockwork Vault that I started for NaNoWriMo last year, the magic comes creeping in. Here come the elves, here come the fairies, and the little mean, spiteful fairies, not necessarily the pretty, happy fairies. I do write dark fantasy, but the magic always just creeps in, and I find myself swept off to another world all over again. Melinda, I need to do that instead of writing book one in a new series. I mean, I put off writing the one that I'm writing for fun right now as a stress relief book for so long, because I didn't feel like I could give myself permission to write this one without finishing Vanguard of Justice for Lord's Gambit. And I realized by not writing it at all, I was hampering what I'm doing. But I have dedicated, here's time I'm going to do Starfire Express. Here's time I'm doing this one. Here's time I'm doing Lord's Gambit. And then when I finish Lord's Gambit, I can take those scenes that I wrote out that were really just present in my head that I had to get down on paper, and I can expand on those and turn those into a full-length book. One of the ones that we got on Instagram is, how is Maedra doing these days? And Maedra, for those of you who haven't read it yet, in my debut epic fantasy novel, which is a standalone, she's the villain. She was one of my favorite characters to write. I love her so much, even though she's the villain. Not going to tell you what happened to her, but Maedra is around. I have been a part of a project. Craig, are you watching? I don't want to get in trouble for giving away too much, but I've been a part of a project I can't say a lot about yet, so you guys are going to have to bear with me. I promise it's coming. But Maedra and Sarah do play a role in that project. So, yes. I'm so tickled. And dipping back into Maedra has just made me like the giddy author feels. She is one of my all-time favorite characters of all the characters I've ever written. Oh, this cover. So this was designed by Jesh Art Studio Group. And as much as I love the cover, it gave away some YA vibes. So I did have it redesigned earlier this year by Mibble Art into one that gives that darker, more adult fantasy style, because I was getting reviews from people like, this is a little dark for YA. I was like, well, it's not YA. It was never meant to be. And I think that was a good lesson for me, that you can have a gorgeous cover, but if it doesn't convey the genre properly, you can pick up readers who wouldn't enjoy it as much as other readers. So I use Mibble Art a lot. I've used Jesh for the Lord's Gambit series, the Oracle of Life, and all of those. And then I've used Get Covers for a couple books, and Get Pre-Mades for Splitting Dawn, which are all sister companies of Mibble Art. So you don't cheat on your work in progress with your side work in progress. I'm not going to tell. Is writing just one scene? That's just a one-time scene, right? That's it. That's it. Never replace you. No. Let's see. What's your writing kryptonite? The one thing you struggle with the most? Definitely endings. And if my editors are watching or my beta readers are watching, you guys know that every single book I have ever written and published, I have had to completely chop the ending off and rewrite the full ending. And I think that's because I don't want to let go of the world. It's hard for me to separate. And I'm also tired. I edit for a living. I'm in books all the time. And by the time you get to the end of an epic fantasy length book, you're exhausted emotionally. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to finish everything up. But I have to remind myself to slow down, to take the time to do it justice. And a lot of times recently, that means getting to the end and then walking away for 3 or 4 weeks and coming back and rereading the end and then fleshing it out, giving it more page time, giving the emotions more time to be resolved. so that I don't have to chop off what is typically the last 3,000 words and completely rewrite them every time. And a close second to that is the first sentence. I have a love-hate relationship with first sentences. I'll start writing a book and I always write the first sentence first after the initial scene that I had in my head. But I think that my first sentence is so great, and then as I go through a write and I come back to it, I'm like, this could be better. Um, and as an editor, I'm extremely hard on people's first sentences. We actually have a series that is coming up this spring where authors have agreed to let me show their first sentence and give it an honest opinion as a developmental editor, and ways to strengthen those first sentences. And that is one of the series I'm really excited about. But I also put my own first sentence through the ringer, you guys. I cut it and rewrite it, I cut it and rewrite it, I cut it and rewrite it. Because after picking up a book for a cover, if I'm not hooked at the end of your first sentence, I'm putting the book down if I'm reading for fun. So, if I'm editing your book or got a book that I have to review, then I'll read the whole thing regardless. Yeah. Another one from Instagram. What are you reviewing these days? So I'm actually not reviewing much this year. I decided going into this year to step back, to take a little time to find a healthier balance for myself. And also out of respect for peers in the community, I wanted to avoid any possible thought of someone getting a review they didn't earn, which is definitely not true. I'm notorious for not giving 5-star reviews. You guys know this if you've been with me a while. That in 2022, I only gave 19 5-star reviews. In 2023, I gave 20-ish 5-star reviews because I look at it as an editor and I look at it from the genre. I can love a book, but it's going to depend on a lot of things, how it's written, what the expectations are for that style. So that's the difference between like an editorial style review and a reader review for fun. So for that, I'm not accepting ARCs this year. I'm going to take some time to read some books for fun, which I definitely will review. I'm doing a buddy read of a book I'm very excited about. You can see it on my YouTube channel, and the author has reached out to me and agreed to give away a copy to you guys. So I will be announcing that giveaway officially here on the channel in the next week, and you can get an author copy of that book for the read through. But I'm treating my reading and reviews just as fun. And if an author has been in a one-to-one interview with me in the last year on the channel, you're not going to see me leave them a public review. If they've been on more than 2 panels, you're not going to see me leave them a public review because I want to avoid any sense of not being objective in the reviews that you guys get. So if I review a book for you, it means that I have not really met that author on the channel. Do I have a favorite character that I wrote? So Maedra is right up there toward the top, the villain in The Vow That Twisted Fate. She is a villain, but in my mind, she is so fun because she is so justified in her villainy, as she really is. The Vow That Twisted Fate takes place in a world that was split into different dimensions long before the main character was born. And when the dimensions were split, everything evil was banished to one dimension, and all that was left behind were the good things. And over the course of the book, my goal is for the main character and readers to ask who gets to decide what's good and evil, and who decided who got banished and why. And Maedra was just one of those villains that just pulled at me. And it's like, okay, yes, she definitely does some evil, dark things, and not justifying them with an excuse. She is evil all the way through. This is an epic fantasy, but giving her some humanity was a lot of fun to write. And then one of the lords in the Lord's Gambit series, his name is Karma. He rides an emu or emu. Yeah. I have a fellow someone from Australia watching, rides the emu around into battle and just has this very sharp wit. Just hilarious. Death rides the emu. I'm sorry, Karma, but Death is who I'm talking about. Death has a very sharp wit, and really enjoyed writing him as a character. Each of the lords in that series have different pros and cons to them from the start. and they get better and better. The more I write them, the more I like them. Yeah, great questions. So, would you release 2 books for different series within the same month? That's a hard question. I personally would not, because I don't have the time in my free time schedule to release more than 1 book in a month. A lot goes into a book launch, depending on what launch it is. That let me back up there. If this is book 5 in a series, it's not going to get the same amount of weight as a debut novel or a novel that's a first in series for a brand new series. If I put out Vanguard of Justice, and that's the 3rd volume of Lord's Gambit, yes, I'm still going to do prep for the launch, but it is not going to be anything like what Starfire Express gets. Starfire Express is going to have a book tour, most likely. It's going to have launch parties. I'm going to ask people to hop on and share about their books, and just have a giant bookish party. That takes a lot of time and effort. And for Lord's Gambit, when I kicked off Oracle of Life, I actually hired Fiction Atlas Press. They have a marketing services team, and they helped me organize everything, because between the blog reviews, the Facebook group parties, the Instagram group parties, the YouTube things, the live midnight launch, it is a very exhausting process. It is a super fun process, but I don't have the energy to do more than one of those in a month for sure. But if you write a lot and you have them waiting, especially if you have 2 slightly different audiences, it could maybe be a good plan for you. That's the other aspect, is you don't want to exhaust your audience. You guys are, some of you guys are probably readers of mine. Some of you guys are probably peers, fellow writers. I never want my readers to feel like I'm spamming them, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. That's not my intention. And if you watch my channel, you know that that's not the kind of channel I have. If you're on socials, you'll know that's not the kind of socials I have. So I don't ever want my readers to feel like I'm just slamming them. I'm not just here to get their money. I want them to read the book, connect with the characters, care about the characters. So my launch typically starts at the beginning of the month or early middle of the month. And then I follow it up with, hey, let's talk about these characters. Let's talk about what happens in the book. Let's read through it. And I just love hearing everybody's thoughts. I love reviews, honest reviews. It's great to see what people liked, what I could have done better for future books. And so I've got a very long launch plan now. With my debut, it was a very short launch plan. It was just a 2-week launch plan, the week before and the week after. Now, when I launch a first in series, it's a very, very in-depth launch. I start marketing pre-orders long before the launch, usually about 6 months, and then market the pre-orders, do all that, more and more and more visibility until launch day, and then I spend a month coming down from that and bringing readers in. Is there a genre you like to write that you haven't tried yet? So I want to write a sci-fi. I really want to write a space opera. I love reading them. They are so much fun. They are, after epic fantasies of any grade, Noble Bright to Grimdark, come the sci-fi space operas as top notch. And I love the authors who can do them and create the new species, like from different worlds. It's just fantastic. I love them so much. And there's so many great ones in the community as well. Matthew Romeo has one series out that's like heist meets sci-fi. And I read it. It was like, oh, this is fantastic. But like I said earlier, when I start out trying to write one, like I started out writing within the Clockwork Vault, trying to be steampunk, which is science fantasy under the science genre. And it quickly became Gaslamp instead. So now it is officially formally fantasy. In came the magic and the elven bankers and all these things. And yeah, there went my science. My science is now whisked away by magic. And I've also dabbled a little bit with the thought of writing a memoir type piece, but not about my life, about the godparents who were a huge part of raising me, and the time that I got to spend with them, because they had so many great stories. And that would, of course, be a nonfiction. But I have only written down those memories for myself right now. Great questions. So 2024 is a big year overall for a lot of people. If you were here for the Indie New Year's Blitz, you saw that so many people had plans for lives and things like that. I am planning on participating in Spiffbox, this self-published fantasy blog off year 10. I don't know what I want to submit. I've only participated in Spiffbo, the self-published fantasy blog off one time, and it was this past year. I put the Violet Twisted Fate in it. Didn't make semi-finalist or finalist or anything, but honestly, the reviews that the reviewers and bloggers gave were fantastic. They were like gold, and the community has been worth every minute of time that I've spent involved with it. So I have to decide whether I want to put Oracle of Life or Splitting Dawn in this year. It has to be a first in series or a standalone to be eligible. So if you're watching and you've seen one of them and you want to leave in the comments which one you would like me to enter or think I should enter, go ahead. You never know who the bloggers are going to be in advance and who you're going to get from that group. So if I put in Splitting Dawn, which is dark epic fantasy with some romance, and then if I put and I get people who don't like romance, then I could be out. So there's no way to like cater, oh, well, here are the judges, here's the one you should enter. But that's part of the fun too, is seeing the wide range. So, and then Oracle of Life, of course, has pretty much no romance in it whatsoever. And it's just dark mythological epic fantasy, borderline grimdark in a few scenes. Yeah. As far as what's coming on the channel, sorry, I've got this up on Instagram and YouTube and Twitter, so I'm trying to multitask everything. I don't do a lot of these. I've never done an Ask Me Anything before. So thank you guys for being so kind with your questions. As far as what's coming up on the YouTube channel, which I've also been streaming to Twitter a good bit, I am still going to continue the indie author live chats, although they will slow down until the summer blitz. You'll see one or two a month of one-to-one interviews, most likely. And then the summer blitz is another big blitz like you guys saw at New Year's, where we bring on panels of indie authors and interview everybody at once. I just had an interview with Montrez. That's up in the Indie Author Live Chats playlist on my channel. And I'm also going to continue the Indie Author Behind the Scenes series for sure, the tools and tips for publishing. But I am a fellow writer. I don't have your answers for everything. So I'm bringing in people who are experts in these fields to help. On the docket in February, we actually have Caitlin, who's going to come on. Caitlin is an avid book reader, but also for a job helps manage author brands on social media. And she's going to talk about things you need to consider for author brands, and social media presence as an author and social media platforms and what readers are looking for these days and how that's changed in 2024. We have David Green, who's going to come on next week to talk about ghostwriting for authors, what you should consider before thinking about selling your work as a ghostwriter or hiring a ghostwriter, what that's really like. And so topics that I don't know as much about, definitely bringing people in. And I'm excited and I'm open to any topics you guys want to know about. You could drop them in the chat. You could drop them to me in a message anytime. My purpose for the channel is to keep indie publishing and indie books accessible without you having to pay a ton of money, because I remember starting back in 2019 my research and having a really hard time finding channels that talked about what the indie publishing journey is really like and what to do that wasn't behind a paywall. I just wanted a real author experience. So the videos that you see here on the channel are not sponsored. A couple of them I have affiliate links for, like if you click Mibble Art to get a cover. But so far, none of my videos have been sponsored. I don't charge authors for attending lives or anything like that. I just want this to be a community space and a safe spot for indie writers and for indie readers. I'm excited that that can expand over into Twitter a little bit as well. And also doing shout outs, for this year. Thank you all so much for the great questions. Everybody who tuned in on both Twitter and then on Instagram and on YouTube. It's been so good connecting with you all. You guys have made this great. Truly, thank you for watching, because I couldn't be doing what I'm doing if you were not here supporting me along the way. So stay tuned. We will be back this week. We have writing sprints coming up, and then we've got those lives with Caitlin and with David coming up as well. If you could like the video, just give it a thumbs up and subscribe to catch them. It'd be a huge help to the channel. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye.